Hi, this will be a short video introducing CSS and getting you started with CSS. So CSS is the language of the web, but it's really the language of what the web looks like. Okay, so HTML is kind of the language of our web pages, and they describe the structure of the page. CSS describes like what that page looks like, right? So we can determine how everything appears on the web with CSS. Okay, so I'm going to go to Safari here, and I'm in github.com. You can go to github.com, and you can go to /soggybag. And this is my GitHub repo. And what we need is we need a web page to style, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to repositories here, and there is a repo called Learn Markup Level 2, and you can even search for that. So if you do like learn, you know, it should show up these things with these two items here, and if you find this one, you can click on it. Okay, there's a few files in here, and you can try these from one of the other videos or one of the other assignments, and they give you some markup, like a markup challenge, and it shows you what the solution is. So you can, you know, take the text here and, you know, try the challenges, and then, you know, the solution kind of shows you what the answer is. I'm going to start with the solution, and we're going to add a style sheet to this first solution here. This file is a sort of a mock-up of what's going on the Android's phones and tablet page, right? So this is the Android website, and this is the phone and tablet page, and it kind of has a cool look to it, right? Like I really like the design here, right? So it has the Android title here, it's got some links at the top, and then it says, you know, phones and tablets. This is a section, and then it's got, hey, if you want it, Android powers it. And then here's another section here, and it says, you know, featured is the section, and Google Pixel 3a is the topic here, and here's a picture of the phone. And so I don't have everything in my example, but I have some of it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to style the text first, and then we're going to style these images and kind of lay them out the way that they're laid out here on this page, right? And with those tools, I think you can get started and do kind of a lot with CSS, right? And that'll be a good introduction. So what do you need to do? Well, first of all, let's download the sample files. And what we really need is we need this file here, challenge1 solution HTML, and then we need the images in the images folder here. So I'm going to go to the download and clone button here, and I'm just going to download the whole repo as a zip file. And so that should put it in my downloads folder. And if I go there, you'll see I've got the folder here that says, you know, learn markup, right? And if I go in here, you can see it's got all the challenges and the images folder, right? So what I'll do is I'll open up this folder with VS Studio Code, and I'll be able to browse all of the files there and edit them in the code editor, okay? So the first thing we need to know about CSS is, you know, where can you write CSS, right? So if you wanted to write some CSS code, where could you put it? So there's a couple choices that we have. We can put it in an external file, and we can link to that file with the link tag. So you would do it this way. You'd start with let me zoom out a little bit here. You'd start with the link tag. I put it in the head of my document, right? And then you'll say rel, and then you'll say style sheet. And the link tag doesn't have a closing tag, so it's one of those tags that doesn't have a pair, kind of like the title tag does. Okay, you can just close it with the angle bracket, and you're done. So you say rel style sheet, so that tells it tells the browser that this link is a link to a style sheet. And then what you do is you use href, and you target a file that you're working with. I don't have a style sheet file here, but if I did, it might be called styles.css, and I could link to it. Okay, I'm actually going to use another method for this example. Another way to write styles into a page is to use the style tag. So I'll put the style tag here, and the style tag gets an opening tag and a closing tag, and everything between the two tags is written in the CSS language. So I'll put CSS here, okay? In the CSS language, this is a comment. So anything between a slash asterisk and an asterisk slash is ignored by the program. So you can put notes in here, you can put markers or kind of comments, you could add notes to yourself by using a comment, right? So I've got the style tag here, and I'll put my styles in here, right? This is an HTML comment, and since this doesn't appear within the style tag, we write it in this form. So this type of comment is for HTML, right? So inside the style tag, everything here is written in the CSS language, right? So we have to use a different form of comment. Okay, great. Let's take a quick look at the document and see what we have here to work with, right? So everything that appears on the page is within the body tag. So I've got the section here, and I put a comment on each section to say what it is. So this top bar is the navigation bar at the top, and it's got a header with an H1 and a nav tag. And then below that, I have a section here that's phones and tablets, and it's got a section tag to surround everything, and then a header tag with an H2 and an H3 in it, and that's it. And then the next section is featured, right? And it's got featured as an H2, and then an H3 that's Google Pixel 3a, right? And then the same thing happens here. You'll notice like latest greatest has a header with an H2 that says latest greatest, and then an H3 that has another bit of text in it, right? And if we compare this to what they have on the Android site, you can see that phones and tablets, this text is really small, and this is what they've put in the H2, right? So it says phones and tablets, and then it says, hey, if you want it, Android powers it, and that's the H3 here, right? To force a line return, I use the break tag because this is all one statement. I didn't want to put each line in its own paragraph, so I just put a break tag here, right, to make it read correctly. Okay, so our goal is to style the text, our first goal, and you should probably do this like anytime you're creating a design for a website. Your first goal is probably just to style the type and see what the type looks like. We'll get ours pretty close. This is a sans serif, so we can probably use, this is probably like one of the Google fonts, but we'll just use Helvetica, right, and that'll get us in the ballpark. And then you'll notice the H2 is a lot smaller than the H3, okay? So let's try that out. So the first thing that we want to do whenever we style a web page is we want to style the font globally. We want to style it for everything on the page, right? And that makes sure that nothing is left unstyled. Oops, and it looks like I misspelled example. I'm going to fix that. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll go here and we'll style the body tag. So I'm writing a basic CSS rule here, and the rule has a couple parts. It's got a selector, and then inside the selector there's always property and value pairs, okay? So property is the name of something we can style, and then the value is the value that we want to apply to that style. Okay, the selector right here points to an element on the page. So when I say body, or if I say any tag name, then the rules here apply to all instances of that tag name. So in this case, I said the body tag, so these rules all apply to the body, right? And the body contains everything that we see that's visible on the page, right? Let's do this. I'm going to open up a new tab in my browser, and then I'm going to go to this document here and open it in the browser. And this is what it looks like by default, right? It's not too exciting, right? So let's see what kind of changes we can make, right? So we've got the body tag here, and we're going to set the font, right? So I'm going to say font family Helvetica. Okay, so that's a default font. We can use that on any computer, right? And if I save that, when I refresh the page here, you can see all the text is Helvetica. Now, I styled the body tag, but I see here that the H2s and H3s and H1 and all the links and the paragraphs and everything is showing in Helvetica. That's because those tags all inherit the font from their parent, right? And the body is the parent for everything. So this is why we want a style on the body, because everything else will inherit these font styles, okay? Okay, great. Let's set the font size. So I'm going to set the font size here to 16 pixels, okay? This is actually the default font size is 16, but we'll just set it here, and you could make this, 18 or, some other number. I'm just going to go with 16 so we've spelled it out, okay? And when I refresh, I don't see any change here, right? Because the default font size is 16, right? I was kind of zoomed in, so I just zoomed out, but that's the default, okay? You'll notice some of the text is larger and smaller, okay? That's because some elements are sized in a relative unit called an M. So an M is a multiplier or a multiple of the base font size. By setting the base font size here on the body to 16, that means that any tag like the H1 that was maybe set in M's to 2 M's would be 2 times 16 to make it 32 pixels, right? Okay. Okay, let's do another style here. So the other style I'm going to set here is line height. Okay, so line height is a value that sets the height of the line around the text. So this adds some space between the lines here, right? So you can see the text here in these paragraphs is pretty close together, right? And that makes it harder to read. So it's nice for us to set the line height to make the text a lot easier to read. By default, I think the line height is set to 1 or 1.2, something like that, and it doesn't read that well, right? So yeah, I guess it's actually set a little bit more than 1, but when I set it to 1, it looks pretty crowded. Usually we want to open up the line height to like 1.5 or something, and then that reads a lot better, okay? Everything takes up a little more vertical space, but now when I look at this paragraph, it's a lot more comfortable for me to read it, right? So line height doesn't require a unit, though you can use a value with a unit, but it's better for us to use just a number, and the number will become a multiple of the current size for that text. So any text on the page that's 16 pixels will now have a line height of 1.5 times 16, so it'll be 24 pixels, okay? Okay, great. So let's set the font size now for the headings, right? And if we look at the Android site, you can see the heading for each section is really small. That's probably about 16 pixels, but this one is like really giant, right? And if I go to the next section here, you can see this is about 16, and then this is maybe like, I don't know, that's pretty big, maybe like 4 times as big, right? So what we'll do is, and the way we've set our page up, remember, the sections all have an H2, which is the small text, and an H3, which is this other text here that should be larger. Now by default, the H2 is smaller, but the H2 is larger than the H3, and the H2 is smaller than an H1. So what we'll do is we'll define a style for each of these, and we'll reset those sizes to something that we like. So I'll say H2s. You guys should all have a font size of 1M. So an M is our multiple, right? So this is 1 times the base font size. So if the base font size is 16, then an H2 should be 16 pixels. Let's do an H3 now. Let's say H3, you're going to have a font size of 4 M's. And then I'll save that and I'll refresh it over here. And let's take a look, right? So we had, this was our H2 before, and this was our H3, and now this is the H2 and this is the H3. Hey, so that's looking pretty good. We added a lot of space here, and that's margin. that goes with the headings, and we'll address that in a little bit. But right now we've got a pretty good approximation of the Android website just for the font styles, right? It's rough still. We still have a lot of work to do, but this kind of gets us in the ballpark with the fonts, right? So anyway, thanks for watching. And in the next video, we'll move on and we'll add some other styles.